I would like to do this like I did before, where we can see this, we can whatever it, you can see me in the little corner down here, and we can go through. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm very tired. I am sleepy. So I don't know how well I'm gonna make it through all this. I hope I can. I'd like to do it in a one take. I don't think there's a lot for me to say. But every time I say that, a 1 hour video becomes a 3 hour video, so I mean, God knows. But, alright, so, we're gonna do the thing. Hello everybody, it's Ahskance. Shock. Obviously, you clicked on my video, so hi. Earlier today, there was a special Q&A session with Suboctavian, and this goes for probably about an hour. I suppose we can actually lock in on this. So yeah, about an hour is what it goes for. Now, knowing me, I do stop and add additional information, or at least try. So what is an hour ends up probably being 2 hours. I'm hoping not to go crazy with it, and I may actually speed it up by a little bit, maybe 1.25, 1.5, so that it's still understandable, but we're kind of moving. But I do want to be honest, there's not a lot of filler here. This is a lot of substantive information, which is why I am making a video on it, because it is important, because this VOD will, in a week or 2 weeks, get buried amongst all other streams and stuff, and it'll disappear. So we're going to go ahead and do the thing. I will start it out with normal speed, and yeah, so I think they're going to do a little bit of intro, and then they'll start taking questions in maybe a minute or two.
Yeah.
Buttons.
Look, to give you a quick rundown of what we're going to do today. So as you may know, as you hopefully know, and if you don't, Taki will be dropping a link for you right now. We just put out an hour ago a rather lengthy statement regarding the situation that recently popped up with our community contributors and, like the wider community. Kind of, like a bit of an idea of what we're trying to do to improve things from our side. I hope you've read it. If not, go take a minute or two to read it. So we thought it would be appropriate after putting out such a statement to come here and to discuss it a little bit, give you a chance to ask some questions, give you some answers. So we've invited Suboctavian to join us for the Q&A. Afterwards, we are going to be heading into the seas of update 0.10.9, give you a rundown of what's going to be coming up with our latest kind of a dev block stream segment. We've also got 2 brand new ships for you to look at. We're going to announce our next and first proper big community event since the start of the COVID pandemic. And then afterwards, we're going to have a King of the Sea show match between Snek and Bansi V to test out some camera shenanigans that we're hoping to be utilizing for King of the Sea 13. So lots and lots of stuff today. So hopefully you'll stick around and enjoy it.
Yes.
Let's welcome today's special guest, Mr. Suboctavian. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, guys.
How are you doing this fine evening? Wrong question.
I'm alive, and that's good.
Yeah.
That's definitely preferable. Alternative.
Yeah, I have no use to your dead. So yeah, happy to see all of you guys, and happy to be here with you.
Yeah, so before we get into questions, would you like to say like a word or two about kind of our statement? I mean, look, we're just going to assume that most of the people in chat have read it, and if they haven't,
I will be dropping the link periodically into the chat anyway, so yeah, whoever didn't read it, and if you have any questions.
So I did cover the statement in a video that I've already put out on YouTube, or recorded on Twitch. If you're watching this right live, it's in my past broadcast kind of area. But this is going through the meat of the Q&A, which they're doing post-statement. So there was a lot of information in there. If you haven't read it yet, if you haven't experienced it, you can check out the video, you can check out the statement. I would highly encourage you to do so. They spent a lot of time on it, but we'll keep going.
Yeah, so anyway, look, if you want to say a word or two about it before we get into answering some questions about it, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, yes, I urge everyone to read it. It's a very important statement, and the whole World of Warships team is behind it. Also, I want to apologize for this statement taking too long. I'm absolutely sure that we should have been quicker with it and more agile. Still, we work hard on the statement, not just on communications part, but on the part of different commitments and plans that are there. So I really hope that this statement will show you that we are truly taking steps to amend the situation and to create better interaction between us and the players, and to, of course, make World of Warships better.
Yeah.
And yeah, and also just immediately I wanted to comment that because I've been following comments on the statement being published on different platforms. Of course, it's been published an hour ago, and I see a lot of people saying something like, okay, cool, but actions speak louder than words. And I just wanted to say that I agree with it, and we all appreciate and understand it. We are going to work on this plan, and we hope that our further actions will show you that we care for it, and we are really committed to do everything that's written there, and
Yeah.
maybe more. So more news may follow.
Yeah, and look, just because I see a lot of people saying the same thing, right? Statements mean nothing. That's true, and we firmly believe this. This is why we also didn't rush out with the statement. We took some time to sit down and think about, what we can tell you that we can and absolutely will deliver on. And we have some very, very hard commitments in that statement, and you can keep us to that, because that's why they're there. That's the whole point of it. But we still want to communicate about what we're going to do, because part of this commitment is to also communicate better. So we have to tell you. And yes, it's absolutely right to be skeptical, but you'll see when things hit the server that we mean what we say.
Yeah, one of the things that also.
So I do want to ask, one, I moved the mic a little further away from me, so maybe I'm a bit quieter and kind of more in respect to their voices just now. And two, I do have this sped up a little bit. Are you able to understand everybody okay? I can move this back to 1x speed if people are like, what? But if there's ever something that's a little fast, I might clarify, because maybe I hear it a little better. But anyway, so if you can comment in chat if the sound is okay and if the speed is okay.
Took quite some time was checking what we actually can do and when we can do it, so that we can actually slot at least some sense of timing into the statement. Because I mean, yeah, it would be embarrassing to state something and then not be able to find it, because hey, it's more complicated than we thought.
Yes. Anyway, so let's open up the floodgates for questions for those of you who have read the read it. Maybe we can start off with one very hot topic that was actually submitted by Readermail on the King the Sea Discord. He's asking, why was the clan battle situation unaddressed? The fact that we have 2 CVs in the meta right now.
So I've discussed this topic separately with the team, and what we saw is that as of now, the teams with 2 CVs are not very favorable in terms of win rate. But on the other hand, like we discussed this feedback, and while we are not going for now to change anything in the current season, I think it's perfectly fair to say that we will take this feedback for next seasons into account, and I doubt that we will see clan versus clan seasons with 2 CVs per team in the near and maybe like midterm future. So we'll change it, and we'll keep monitoring it, and we'll probably return to this setup only when we are sure that it plays differently and it's okay to return to it.
So I was really surprised to hear this. I did kind of talk about this a little earlier, but maybe I can kind of rehash it. So I've only heard, I've primarily heard that there's a whole lot of people that are really upset about double CV. Like, they're not enjoying clan battles this season. It's just not fun. They can't get people to play. Even on the higher tiers, the Typhoon, the Hurricane stuff. It's not gelling with them. I do think there's an issue in that a tier 6 season, there's a lot of tier 6 CVs surface ships that don't have very good AA, specifically because tier 4 is your first introduction to CVs. Tier 6 is more of a interactive experience, but it's still a learning tier. It's still a basic experience. You don't really have damage to just run away with the match easily. But because there's lower tier AA, because the AA is just not amazing, you have more consistency. So you'll be very consistent throughout the match because you don't lose planes just all gone into whatever. That can translate to clan battles. However, most clan battle folks bring AA. They set up to be able to kill planes. They have an idea of how that all works. So plane losses should happen, although I imagine in the lower tiers of the ranked area, you may have people that just don't know. They don't know AA. They don't know the situations, the positioning, the ships, how AA mechanics work. And it might just be kind of brutal down there. But I was very surprised to hear that double CV doesn't have, I guess, as good of a win rate as 1 CV, 1 battleship or double battleship. So their data internally is showing that double CV is not running away with the game. I think there were a lot of people that expected that double CV was going to be restricted going into this week's clan battle season because it's now 2 weeks in, and it was not. And based on what he said, it sounds like that's not going to happen. Like, they're actually comfortable with where it is, which is surprising to me, really. I mean, it's not surprising because I understand how strong battleships are. That's not surprising to me. It's surprising because I've just heard so much, so many vocal people saying, oh, this is, and yet it's just the reality of it doesn't bear out. So like intellectually, I'm not surprised. Heart-wise, I kind of am surprised. Thank you very much for the gift sub, Reformed. Anyway, we're going to continue with the thing.
Okay. Next, there was a question from M. Jester and Botten. I think both of those, no, actually, no, not M. Jester, but Botten will be playing this evening in this show match as part of SNEC, which was awesome. He's asked, have you considered listening more to top-level players and clans and their feedback for clan battles? For example, when it comes to tier or format decisions.
Yes. I think what we will start with is that we will start to talk more about how this feedback is incorporated into our decision-making process. One of the ideas we've committed to is to, for example, explain how we use the system of ship bans, the system that we've brought to clan battles relatively recently, and how we analyze the CVC, what's happening there, and how it affects our decisions. Maybe it will create a good platform for dialogue, and we'll see what can be done next. So that's our intention.
And then, because, you know, the King of the Sea Discord people got in early before the stream started, the next question is again from Readermel. He's asking if you can tell us a little bit more about the transparency surrounding the drop rates, the drop percentages from crates being published, and why it will take a year to implement.
I think you shouldn't read this, our statement, that it will take a year to implement, because it will not take probably a year to implement. That's the hard deadline for us. We committed that it will be done not later than next year. And the reason that we cannot do it immediately, like tomorrow, even though it may seem it's as easy, is that actually we have to operate the game in all regions of the world. And this includes, for example, China. And technically, as you know, in terms of video games and how monetization mechanics regulated, China is especially regulated, and it's a challenging region. So our idea is that we want to start disclosing drop rates for all containers, all random bundles, in a consistent way everywhere, like in the product, in all regions. And to do that, we'll have to do some fair amount of legal and technical work to make it happen. So we, of course, will do due diligence to do it as soon as we can, but we also make hard deadline, and it is no later than next year. So I really hope it will happen sooner than later. But we also just to show you that we're serious about it, and it's not like plan or intention. That's a promise. We will do it, and there is deadline for it. So you're welcome to hold us accountable for it. That's how it should work, I think.
Yeah. So not a joke. I'm not sure what that is. I'll read that in a second. So initially after the statement, I mean, there was a lot of feedback like, well, if you know what the fucking drop rates are, if you know what this is, you know what that is, why aren't you just coming out with it? Why don't you just put it out there? And Wargaming has made a point several times in the past that if they're going to do something to one server, they do it to all servers. They don't make changes. Like if North America doesn't like CVs, they don't nerf CVs on North America, but nowhere else. They don't run the game that way. The game is the same everywhere. So what they're saying is, one, China evidently is going to be a lot of red tape that they're going to have to figure their way through, you know, because there's going to be a path from point A to point B. Also, when you publish the drop rates, that may interact with how people spend money on the product, because if the drop rates suck, they might not buy it, you know, whatever. They may have to do back-end research to figure out, one, how to present drop rates in a legal way, two, what effect presenting drop rates is going to have on their sales, which I think they should already have a lot of that data from World of Warship's Legends, which is available on consoles, but maybe PC is a different market. However, they stated that the loot box and random bundles are not considered part of their baseline earnings. Baseline earnings are going to take care of the company. However, additional earnings are going to pad the company so that they can take additional time, or they can hire additional people to do external projects, or, you know, get more content into the game than the bare minimum. So in short, it is going to take work. I was personally thinking, well, why couldn't you just slap some percentages in a news item and just throw it on the web if you can't recode it into the game, or you can't whatever? But essentially, that's just not what they're going to do. If they're going to do something, it's going to be a coordinated rollout. It's going to take time to do a coordinated rollout, and they're going to have to go through all of the different areas and regions that they publish in, and make sure that when they do a coordinated rollout, that it correctly works for everywhere at once. In other words, it's gonna be time. But will it be a year? Probably not. I don't think it's going to take that long, but that's the time that they committed to, rather than saying, well, we'll have it done by the end of 2021, which is what, 3 months from now? They won't have it done later than 2022. So that's certainly a lot of time. They seem to be more concerned with the effects of signals than matching captain skills closer. Captain skills make a huge difference, then add 2 tiers higher on top of that, as they should. I guess I'm not really sure what this question is in reference to. I'm going to continue the Q&A.
Okay, great. Sorry guys, if I'm seeming a little bit distracted right now.
There's a
got
lot of
eagle
new
eyes.
questions popping in.
Yes, eagle eyes on the chat. We are going to try and answer as many questions as we can, but please be aware that obviously there's a lot of you and just 3 of us, so we're gonna struggle. Just as a quick disclaimer here. So there was a question here from Red Roni. It's actually maybe a question that's not as interesting for some, but I think it's a valid point. He says, I'm a smaller streamer and I've been streaming your game for more than 2.5 years now. I love the game and the amazing community. Becoming a community contributor was a goal for me, but with the recent CC exodus, that has been shattered. What are your future plans for the CC program and how are you going to make it appealing again for content creators?
That's probably the part where I will not be able to give a lot of details right now, because for now, for us, it's obvious that CC program needs a heavy update. I would use the word rework, but no. in our game, it has interesting history. So a heavy update, maybe soft relaunch. The problem is that right now we don't have this plan ready, but we're working on it. And as written in our statement, we are going to address it during autumn. And also, I wanted to outline that even though the recent incident is very serious, we take it seriously. I think that, on the other hand, and I just want to understand that multiple years of our work on CC program, multiple years of communication, discussions, a lot of our mutual victories and some failures as well. I don't think they shouldn't. I don't think they should characterize like the whole. I don't think that recent mistakes should render all of these achievements obsolete. And the program is still working, and there are more than, I think, 180 people there. And the program will be working for them in the meantime, so they will get our support, and they will get what we are supposed to give them. And then I hope in a couple of months we will update it and make sure that it's better than it was before.
Yeah, and like from my perspective, also just to add to this, right, there are still almost, I think, 200 people in the community contributor program, and it absolutely has value. And I think and I hope that most of the people, or even all of the people in it, like to be in it. We certainly have improvements to do, but the community contributor program is far from dead. Just to put that out there from my perspective.
So, 2 things. Maybe I was able to increase the sound a little. If you can tell me if the sound is better for the stream relative to my voice, that would be appreciated. And in terms of the CC program part, they have let us know that they're looking to address the CC program. They're still figuring it out, just like they did on this stream. So there's been a little bit of communication directly. There's been a bit of communication to us. Long story short is, if they're going to adjust or alter the program, that's still being determined. But the program does meet its base. Well, I'm sorry, I don't think I can fix that. I don't know how to make this louder relative to the stream at the moment, so as long as you can functionally hear it, I don't know. Okay, so the CC program, just to reiterate, as I've said a few times, but we'll go over it real quick. The CC program is designed to help a content creator, a person that interacts with the community of World of Warships, kind of enables them a little to interact stronger. So they're going to have some giveaways that they could do. They're going to have some test ships some ships that they can show off. Basically, community contributors are given coal ships for free. They're given a little bit of some doubloons every week or every month, every patch. I mean, they're given some stuff to announce, or some NDA ships to play around with, so that they can make videos to release when it comes out. Like there's a leg up in the program to give you access to things, and plus you could be rated by the World of Warship stream, which is like 10,000 people. So I mean, that's potentially nice. The program in and of itself is designed to enable somebody to help them make content better, to help them interact with the community better. It does that. That part is not failing. The part that failed, or seems to be failing, is the part where a lot of these community contributors felt that they were supposed to give feedback and interact with the core direction of the game, while the game developers are like, we're making the game. Why do you need to make the game too? I guess that's like a fundamental, confusion, butting heads. And there were a lot of the CCs that left that expressed frustration that like our feedback isn't listened to, our views aren't listened to, they're just telling us how it is and they're shoving this down our throat. We don't agree with the direction the game is going and they're doing it anyway. You know, there's a lot of frustration there, but that's not what the CC program is. Now, that's not to say that it couldn't become that if they wanted to change it. Personally, I think the CC program works, and at best, all it's really going to end up doing is either retooling into, they're going to come out with a set of guidelines for how CCs interact with wargaming and wargaming interacts with CCs. So they have just basically like an interaction rule set, basic whatever. So that, one, CCs know this is the program, this is what's here, this is what we give you, this is what you give us, this is how we interact. Like if they just outline it all, there's that option. Unless they did something that was more like a 2-tier option, but I don't know how the hell they would do all that. So they are still working on it. They're still figuring out, I guess, what they're going to try to morph the program into or ultimately let it become. Personally, I don't think it's just like this golden ticket. It's not this amazing, like, I'm part of an exclusive fucking club, yeah! It's really just designed to be there to be an assistance point and also kind of a perk. And that's kind of it. So I just think they'd probably clarify as to what it is and how deep or not deep it's going to go. Wonderful Thursday. Hope my day's been fantastic. I've been tired. I've been tired a lot lately. I don't know. I got to work on that. Okay, we're going to continue.
But let's follow up for this. Clyde the Monkey, one of the CCs in question, why were CCs told earlier this year that old operations were not coming back, but all of a sudden, during all of the stuff that happened in August, they are suddenly coming back?
So why were CCs told that operations were low priority and yet suddenly the operations are coming back?
I think you're muted.
We have always...
Oh, we're gonna have to deal with this shit, aren't we? That sucks. Better living through chemicals? I'm just tired. I don't know why I'm so tired. I'm confused by that. But I am. Could create too many cooks in the kitchen if CCs have much say. That's really honestly a problem. That's absolutely a thing. And I think that was one of the biggest reasons why there was so much vitriolic grr. Because there were people that expected to be a cook in the kitchen and they weren't able to cook anything. I mean, if we go on an abstract, and this is not CC related, right? CC program is over here. The little white mouse thing is over here. It's completely a separate thing. Yes, she was a CC, but it's a different situation. And when she and I guess Chobitsu got invited to make a ship, in a way, they're becoming quote unquote a cook in the kitchen, right? And my personal belief, and I actually ask a question here, so that ends up getting clarified, which I thought was pretty cool. So I'm glad they took my question. My personal belief was that when you kick out 400 ships and you have a process that involves 60 to 120 people or however many different teams that all work on the shit, you got a process starts at A, ends at Z. And then suddenly for one of those ships, one of those hundreds of ships that you've done, there's this outside consultant party that's going to come in and do all this stuff. Like, machines are designed to work in a set way. And people, I mean, they're living, but in terms of business interactions or whatever, you have your job, you do your task, you're kind of functionally a machine on an assembly line. I was really concerned, like, is this outside influence gonna fuck it all up? And it seems that it was more of a communication issue in the stronger sense that really fucked everything up. And maybe they did have protocols for being able to add that in, but still, when you start getting these outside sources that are coming in and trying to alter a machine that's in motion, like, you can't be surprised when it goes awkward. because if there's not a method for doing that, then all it takes is for somebody to stop paying attention or drop the ball for a moment, and suddenly, you know, the machine takes your hand off and it's off to the races. So anyway, okay, we're gonna continue.
Again, please.
So
think I
he's
didn't get it.
asking the earlier information that we gave out is that we weren't going to bring operations back, that they
Let me slow this down because Conway talks
were
faster.
not a big priority because of the lack of popularity. But now we've you know, now we said that we are going to bring some of them back.
No, there's still lack of popularity. These problems didn't magically disappear. I think that this question comes from my one of my initial answers on NA forum a while ago, and I think that answer was a bit incomplete, so I will happily clarify it. So the main problem which we had was AI after CV rework, and the CV rework rendered not just AI, because obviously we have bots, they're working, right? But we also have a lot of internal development tools which we use to work with PvE especially, and a lot of these things were rendered either obsolete or they were not working really well. So right now we are working on updating all of this toolset to work with PvE, and we do it not just for the sake of operations. We do it for other experiments, other game modes. We have a lot of things in development and in plans, and we need this toolset to work with PvE. But one of the bonus, I think one of the big bonus parts of this work is that when we're done, we will be able to bring some of the old operations back. So I don't think that there's any inconsistency here. Like, yes, operations honestly were not our top priority, and they were not overly popular, but we do want to use the content which players enjoyed, and we will have toolset for it, and we'll work on it. And I'm not telling you anything about new operations specifically, because right now we don't plan to do new operations, being honest with you. But at least we want to rebuild, update, and bring back some of the old ones, so we have wider range of them. That's something we are behind right now.
So there was some pushback to this, where Sub Octavian went to the North American forums. He was just talking with people. You know, he jumped on and started doing some Q&A stuff. Evan had started doing Q&A stuff, kind of just getting information out. He started doing it too, which I guess in the past, Sub has been not the best PR person because he's very informative. You know, if you're out there and you're just trying to get information out and you're trying to talk to people, not play the public relations game where you're finessing your message, well, then it's really easy for the message to go weird if people decide to take it in strange directions. I mean, I don't know, but I think historically, I know of a few times where Sub Octavian said something and people got angry. Well, anyway, he showed up. He started putting out information. I think it worked really well. And one of the pieces about that is what he talked about here, where they've retooled a bunch of tools, retooled the AI tools that they have so that they can do AI interactions, or I guess they're getting close to being able to do that better or finalizing this new tool set. And that has an offshoot of being able to interact with operations because they had to pull several operations that used non-CV based planes. Because I guess they removed that game logic when they changed the coding for the new carriers. So it was brought up in the CC Discord. It was brought up in forums. Like, well, why the fuck are you saying now that operations have been being fixed for the last 2 years when you've been telling us that there are not a lot of people that play operations and you're not working on it? Well, they weren't fixing operations. They were fixing AI. They did actually do an AI update, I think 6 months to a year ago. How it all got deployed and implemented, I personally don't quite recall. But I did have an experience running some test ships where I played in Tier 1 a bunch, and there's lots of bots in Tier 1. And I had a good experience. You know, having bots on your team wasn't just something that was going to sail forward until it got shot and murdered. It derped around and moved forward and dodged a little and shot. I mean, it made for an immersive, fun experience. So it was kind of like you having a bunch of, average to sub-average players on your team, and you're just kind of playing the game. And if you start taking the lead, you have more bots than they do, then weight of fire is probably going to be in your thing. So it made for a little mini game. Try to kill their bots faster than they kill your bots, so you overwhelm with the fire. Anyway, if they're already working on AI and this leads to not new operations but the reintegration of the old ones, great, because I know that's a pain point for a lot of people. And also, there was a comment on the forums that I think was addressed to Evan where he said, "Ooh, that's really interesting feedback. I'm going to remember that." Where somebody said that operations can break up the monotony. Because you can play co-op or you can play random for like 2 or 3 hours and then I just want something different. And maybe you and your div hop up into an operation thing and you just kind of do it for fun. And then that was enough time to kind of pull you out of the random co-op experience. And now you can go back in and play more. So in that case, operations for this player is a way to extend his play time as opposed to just like he just plays operations all day. And Evan was like, ooh, that's an interesting thing to look for. Because when you look at data, data will just tell you numbers. It doesn't give you the underlying concepts. It's just there. It's on you to figure out what it actually means. And, if they're able to kind of look at like, what's the percentage of a person's playtime when they do operations, it might be 5 or 10%, but is it consistently 5 or 10%? Is it a part of their play routine? That could actually be something interesting to look at because that may actually be a thing. But anyway, so little rar, we're going to keep going.
There's a question from Aran Pell that actually I think we should take right now because it will help to shed light on all the other development-related questions. So the question is: I know it is mentioned that you be doing a roadmap, but why does it often seem that everything in the pipeline is set super far in advance, which limits flexibility to addressing concerns/issues? So basically, how long, how long does it take to even get something in the game?
It really depends. It really depends on what we're talking about. So for things like ship branches, for example, I'm not talking about singular ships. I'm talking about full branches. It's something, for example, which should be planned farther in advance because of the amount of research needed to be done to get them in game, and amount of work, just man hours of our team, testing, balancing, and all this stuff. And this is something we plan sometimes even 2 years in advance. And ship branches are an example of the feature which is, I think, the least prone to being moved or changed in terms of timing, because we have very strict, very tuned production process for them. And usually, if we commit internally that we do this branch here, usually it's not shifted because the process is very, very well working. There may be some other features. For example, in the statement we published, we are talking about, but we still want to address topic of CV spotting. But if we talk about CV spotting, we already tested several solutions, like with our external testing groups, and they didn't work well. And this is something that is in the process of R&D. And that's why we cannot commit that we will resolve this and we will find a good way to address spotting this month, because we don't know that. We work on it, we discuss, we try to design something, but it's a long R&D process and it doesn't have proper, predictable timing. And if we're talking about some minor things like adding, for example, let's just say some ship skins, they have much shorter production process. If we're talking about something gameplay related, which touches upon game logic, this is usually longer just because it involves work from more people and it involves more checks. So our roadmap, let's just say our roadmap doesn't have the same level of flexibility. It depends on features and scale of changes. In some things, we try to be flexible, and we can be flexible. In some things, like, for example, ship branches, we just cannot be too flexible because we are talking about literally a year of production. I hope I understood the question correctly and I addressed it properly.
So, for those that don't know what a roadmap is, there's an excellent version of roadmap, at least there was when I used to play it, for EVE Online, an MMO, where they would give you like, this is our 6-month goal, this is our 4-month out goal, this is our 2-month out goal, and if it gets delayed, it gets delayed. They can notate that this has been delayed by a month or two, because shit happens, things happen. The problem with roadmaps are you're gonna have people that they're gonna see, ooh, this happens in 6 months, and then by fucking god they want it to happen in 6 months. But the reality of coding means it might not. And historically, they've been very close to the chest with a lot of this information because a lot of other games as a service places have found that they cannot promise something unless they can guarantee that they can go through with it. So in general, roadmaps and stuff, people don't tend to bring those out very much. Yeah, when building new stuff, it takes longer than modifying an existing thing. There's that as well. Roadmaps have to adapt, sure. So I think they committed in that statement that they're going to try to put out a roadmap. So that might be 3 months into the future. It might be 6 months into the future. Right now, they tend to release data or release information about where the game is going in maybe 2 months. So maybe they'll go out into 4 months or the 6 months, a little murkier, a little farther off into the future, and they'll see how it goes. And if it ends up resulting in just massive amounts of ass pain and people screaming about this, that, and other stuff, then maybe they'll undo it. But here's hoping that having more information is good, that people will enjoy having more information, which is one of the big thing with all these Q&As. Not only are the Q&As just answering specific questions about what's going on now, they're answering some behind the scenes information about how the company works, how the company arrives at decisions, what the company is thinking, which helps people to, empathize or to walk a mile in their shoes, kind of see what they're dealing with and understand the behind the scenes, as opposed to just being like, well, fucking it fixed yet. Because that's really easy to do, but it's the wrong thing to do. We're going to continue.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people have to realize is that because we are a live game, because we plan to be a live game for many, many years to come, right? We have a constant cycle of things that are getting developed, and it's not as easy to just say like, hey, this is a cool thing, we want to do it right now like this, and it'll be ready in like 2 months. We're going to go live. It would be cool if it was that way, but unfortunately, I think game development just doesn't quite work like that. There was another question on the topic of operations from Shatricor. He's asking, do you know which of the scenarios will be coming back and which won't?
Unfortunately, no, because the guys need to finalize working on tool set and restoring and updating the AI, and then they will get to evaluation. But we will certainly share the details when we have them in devlog.
Okay. There's a bit of a loaded question here from Shirakami Kon. Loaded in the sense of it carries a lot of opinion with it, but I'll give it a go anyway. He says, when will it be clear enough that sheer data and whatever spreadsheet you're using doesn't tell at all the current situation of problems in game? For example, how does the popularity of a ship have anything to do with its need to buff or not, or nerf it? We said that Zhao is fine, or you said that Zhao is fine because it was one of the most played cruisers in the game, but he thinks this has nothing to do with it being a relic from the beginning of the game that's in desperate need of a buff due to power creep. Can you shed a little bit of light of how popularity is a factor that we use in balancing?
Yeah, sure. I was not doing this Q&A, and I really sincerely hope that this was not the exact answer that my colleagues gave you, because it's incorrect. We do not take.
Yeah, unfortunately, on the Q&A, it was a Q&A on the World of Warships Discord, the official Discord or whatever. That was actually given basically as the answer, which is like, well, we don't think Zhao needs a buff because it's extremely popular. It has many battles played. Well, the Zhao's been around for however many years now, so yeah, it's going to have a lot of battles played, but are there a lot of battles played recently? It felt like an awkward answer. Realistically, they're going to have more information on the back end, and I think I did a response to that, to the Q&A, where it's like, there's going to be a spectrum of balance. There's going to be ships that are a little on the high side, a little on the low side, and that's okay. You're never going to find perfect parity. And it could just be that Zhao is on the low side. Maybe Zhao, the Japanese cruiser line, is designed to be more of an ambush line, and because of that, they're very powerful in an ambush situation, but they're not expected to just open water damage farm. So realistically, they're not going to be getting as much damage as they could otherwise. It could be a design concept. For instance, Dutch cruisers don't have great guns. They're not expected to be damage monsters because they're just not. They're tanky, their concealment's great. They have this bomb mechanic which might yield them more damage and certainly yields them threat. There's variety there. But yes, the Q&A answer was well, it's played a lot, so it must be fine. It was not a good response. People did not take that very well. But anyway, he's going to respond to the popularity as a balancing concept.
Make decisions on buffing or nerfing ships because of popularity. Popularity is connected with ship performance, but it's not directly connected with ship performance. So we are fine with buffing a ship which is popular if it underperforms. I think what we look at and what what was probably meant by the reply, I don't know the exact reply, but obviously it was not good enough. Sorry for that. Is that we take popularity into account in a way how many people play the ship and what are these players. Because sometimes we may have a ship which, on average, if we exclude the player, like if we exclude the factor, it may perform, for example, very, very well and over all other ships in the group. But then we look at its popularity and see who plays the ship. And sometimes it happens, for example, that due to some reason, maybe it's an early access ship, which is obtained by more hardcore audience, or maybe it's something like a very, very rough but obvious example would be a steel ship. These ships are generally bought by very experienced players, and they, of course, they naturally make the ship statistics higher, and we need to take it into account. On the other hand, the ships that are very, very popular and widely available, they might have lower statistics, and we do not. There is no simple formula like this ship is popular, so we will not buff it. No, but we do look at who plays it and compare their performance on different ships. Try to compare groups of players playing different ships in one group and do relative analysis. This is what we do. So there is like a tool. I think actually, if I remember correctly, a couple of years ago, we
yeah,
did
our balance stream.
Yeah,
we
we did
do
stream,
another one.
We did a stream with you where I showed you the version of this tool. I think we were discussing ships like Colbert, if I remember correctly.
Colbert versus Smolensk, yes.
Smolensk, yeah, and probably and maybe some German battle cruiser as well. I don't remember, but what I'm saying is that we have the tool where we take into account all things, including popularity, including the players who play the ship. But it doesn't mean that we take popularity as the main factor for balancing. No, of course not.
Yeah.
And actually, good idea. Maybe we should do either stream or maybe remind the community how we do it and explain it better. Maybe do some article. Actually, there is information about our commitment to be more transparent and explain how we do things better in the statement. So I hope in the following months there will be some interesting publications for you guys.
Yeah, I think like something like a balance stream is a good idea. I personally think, and maybe Stream Chat will agree.
I don't like this name because when I say balance stream, I imagine that we will balance ships right on the stream, and it's probably something.
It's
something.
exciting. Can we have a special server where we can change the values before every game?
It's not safe, but okay.
Yeah, so that's just them reiterating that ships are not balanced based on popularity. A lot of people are playing it. It must be great. Let's nerf it. Nobody's playing it. It must suck. Let's buff it. There's nothing else to say other than that it's kind of moronic to just assume, well, nobody's playing it. Fuck, we just buff it. Make it more powerful. Like, that would be like saying, well, there's not a lot of FDR players right now because it's a steel ship. Let's buff it. Let's make it more powerful. Yeah, I don't think it needs that. I think it's okay. But they also mention in here that they do try to take into account whether it's popular or not popular. They try to take into account the player base that's actually playing the ship. So steel ships are going to be harder. Why? Because average players aren't really going to accumulate steel. There are going to be some players play for 6 months, 7 months, and then they stop playing because it's free to play. There are going to be some people that play for 5 years. They accumulate shitloads of steel. They have tons of game mechanics under their belt. They're very informed, capable players. They get the steel ships. They play the steel ships. They do well in them. So because it's gated, it's worth looking at the caliber of player that's playing the ship on average. I actually think that's why they're now nerfing the Petropavlovsk, the Zao, and the FDR. It's a combination of two things. One is player feedback. Lots of players are like, fuck the FDR, fuck Petro. And then obviously there's a whole bunch of buff Zao stuff as well. So there's feedback, but there's also the FDR may have been a very powerful outlier, but if they're constantly looking and they see, well, there are really strong players playing the ship, of course it's going to be an outlier. That may have been enough to cockblock them from addressing the situation. But realistically, it's a situation that should be addressed, and they started working on that. They nerfed its damage a little. I personally think they should go from 14 planes down to 12, down to 10. No, they're not nerfing Zhao. They're going to buff the Zhao. It has not been announced how they're going to buff Zhao. It said nerf FDR and Petro. I may have accidentally stated nerf other thing as well, but no, they'll be changing the Zhao to make it stronger. That was announced in the statement that they put out. Petro also. I don't know how many people have a Petro just because it is kind of a newer ship. It's only been out for maybe like a year, 2 years and a half now. That being said, it may have an average performance, which is not amazing. It may be that average players get dunked in the Petro. But the problem is players that know what they're doing can make the Petro as resilient and obnoxious as a battleship. And her guns are awkward, but they don't suck. You know, if they hit, if they connect, they do an extreme amount of oof. So it's definitely an outlier situation. And they have statistics and data that show that, which is why they keep banning the Petropavlovsk in competitive or... Well, yeah, competitive. And like King of the Sea, they banned it in clan battles, or they limited it in clan battles. Realistically, the average player might play it and not yield great results, but its highs are too high, and it needs to be addressed, and they've committed to addressing it, but I don't know how they're going to address it. So that's nice, at least. So they asked if they buff or nerf around popularity. It's more deep than that. It's always been more deep than that. But they will be trying to incorporate feedback more into their decisions, which I guess is already culminating in an FDR and Petro nerf and a Zhao buff.
So
Yeah,
we'll
but
see.
like I thought that was stream was
Also, I'm just going to run this at 1x speed because occasionally people get excited and they talk faster, and it's like, I'm just going to run it at 1x speed. So we have another roughly 40-something minutes to go, so we're about 20% of the way. 30% of the way through? So it wouldn't be an Ahskance stream if it was quick, but we'll keep going.
very interesting, even for me as an employee who knew some of what's going on, because the kind of depth and the data that we use for this is you know, it's very different from the data that's like publicly available, because we can put all the data into context with like who's produced this data, who's played the game, what circumstances, who have they played it against, what, you know, is the, like it's very interesting, and it gives you a lot of in-depth insight.
Oh, trust me, preparing for the stream was interesting for me as well, because I'm not doing ship balancing, but I wanted.
User orders Grubhub.
Well, that sucks. Yeah, I'm not going to be a fan of the random 1 minutes of commercials and shit that'll pop up, but I don't really have a way around it. I guess I could subscribe to World of Warship stream. No, I don't think you can. I don't think there's a subscription button, so maybe I just couldn't. We're just stuck with the occasional random commercial. Hope they don't over-nerf the FDR. You're soon to have enough steel for it. It's unlikely. The FDR... It has two issues with it. One is it's got really potent damage interactions, but at the same time, it's not that much scarier than a midway. So it's not really the damage is fucking crazy. The problem is more that it comes out with 14 planes, and it attacks 2 at a time. So you could theoretically attack 7 times. Now that's gated by a 25-second cooldown between attacks, but if you sit on top of a battleship that can't force you off, then you can just hit them over and over and over and over again. And your broadside strikes, or like your broadside torps or whatever, can hit for like 18 to 20k. You can kill a battleship in 4 or 5 damage interactions. Less if he takes floods or fires that can't be repaired. I mean, it's pretty brutal. So my personal belief is that the FDR needs to come down to 12 planes or maybe 10 planes, so that it's a little easier to beat back the planes, you know, get off me, and then cause them to have to fly off from the carrier and go all the way over to do something as well. Like there needs to be more return trip action for the FDR. Currently there is, if you have 3 or 4 ships that are grouped together, or they've got, you know, coordinated AA or something. But if there isn't, if it's 1 or 2 ships that are kind of isolated, then no, they're just going to keep getting slammed and slammed and slammed. And that's, the CV has to help, the surface ships have to help, and if it just doesn't happen, it makes for a really shit-tastic situation. You did see one get 1 squatted last night? Yeah, I mean, theoretically, you could attack 7 times doing 20,000 damage per attack, assuming the enemy had their AA off. So if Yamato had its AA off, or it was a Musashi, and you could hit for 20k every 7 times over, that's 140,000 damage. Yeah, of course you could kill a battleship. Even more if it gets flooded or burned or whatever. Anyway, we're going to continue with the thing.
Get the full picture. So yeah, I think it's worth repeating and updating probably, because our methods and tools change from year to year. In the very beginning, when I started working here, we were really looking mostly at average things, average win rate. But with each year, our tools has been evolving and becoming more complex to take more factors into account. And it's very important to do, because there are more and more ships in our game each year, and to support this ecosystem, we need to also, evolve our approach to balancing and our tools.
Yeah. Victor Archery actually had a follow-up question. It says, please, can you make this data publicly available? Victor Archery, this is something that we're not willing to do. It's not an easy amount of data to kind of interpret, and it also is using like our proprietary in-house tools that we, it's not something that we can share with the public. You can look at public stats, and there are some really good community resources to kind of give you an idea, but for the full in-depth thing, this is something that we're not willing to share at the moment.
I'm not a huge fan of whataboutism, but there is good reason why most of the online game do not disclose all of their information. However, we will do our best to share some data when we do these publications and show you. We'll be sure to show you some examples. That's a fair point, because we want you to understand how it works on our side.
Yep. There a question on West Virginia 44 from What's a Rusty Venture. He's asking, would you be open to community suggestions for the design of West Virginia 44? And do we have anything planned ourselves yet?
Look, I think that this ship will be introduced in our regular process. So there will be ways to give feedback on it to our test and focus groups, who usually receive ships to test it on production. However, given the length that it took us to introduce the ship, it will take us, because it's not introduced yet. And the fact that we should have been quicker in this, we will probably add something to it, something special, as a sign of appreciation to the players. I don't know what it is, what it will be yet. We didn't agree to it, but I'm saying about things. Maybe some special camouflage or special flag or something. We'll see. But we want it to be a bit special because of the pretty bad timing on our side, and as a sign of our apology, because we should have introduced it sooner, obviously.
So, I think that might have been one of Dr. Venture's alts, because I think when he read the name, it was Venture, and Dr. Venture seems to be very engrossed in the West Virginia 44 situation, whatever. Evidently, West Virginia 44, I guess, is a similar style of ship or similar post-rework conversion to the California. And the California seems to be not armored enough or not whatevered enough that the California is just considered to be underpowered because it's got 34-second guns and whatever. Just because people get bitching about it, I actually bought the California and I triple killed in 2 games out of 3. Not, within 10 seconds of each other, but I mean, she's a pretty capable little ship. I don't know why people bitch about it. But there's concern that, like, well, if the California is not able to, strut its stuff and just beat the shit out of people, how would we expect this West Virginia 44 to walk into the situation and not just be, second-class citizen? Well, that's going to come down to the balancing process. They're going to have to figure that out. I mean, I'm sure they will, but the West Virginia 44 was a refit older ship, and I don't know. So hopefully that goes well, but I hope people don't expect that just because, like, this ship was sitting in dev hell for 4 years now that it's going to somehow be released in an OP state. It's just not realistic. Yeah, from what I understand, like, the refit basically gave better AA. So I guess this is mentioned better shells, better torpedo belt. All right, cool. But the California has a better torpedo belt and, I mean, good shells, I guess. Maybe they'll come out with a different version. I don't know. I'm sure they'll figure it out, and maybe it'll be a little bit of a ship clone. But I'm sure they'll figure it out. Anyway, we're going to continue.
we'll follow up on details with this. We know it's a hotly requested ship when we, like getting it closer to the time and we have some details to share. The Faded Falcon is talking about the detonation flag farming situation. Can you share a little bit of insight as to why we removed flag rewards from achievements in general? What the thinking about it was and what kind of the consequences for players now in game?
Look, detonation flag were not farmed. I think that was a very unfortunate reply from one of my colleagues, and I think he apologized for it. We didn't mean that people farm detonations. It just sounds weird. I mean, farming detonations. How do you do it? We wanted to shift the way of obtaining flags from achievements to something broader and more universal. And we believe that combat missions we currently have are broader and more universal, and in the way that more players actually can complete them. I understand that the previous system was probably more appealing to some players who farm a lot of achievements, who are just that good. But we believe that the new system is more flexible and it's more appealing to general player base because you have much less strict requirements for these missions. You just basically play in different modes and you get the flags. However, what I can tell you is that we will discuss with my colleagues this question because we understand that some of you guys may miss the feeling of being rewarded with something, just with something on top of achievement, just to underline that this is an achievement. So we may get back to it a bit later. We'll consider this, but we believe that new system is good and we will not remove it because I think it works well for a lot of players, and that would be not good to change it back as it was. So maybe we'll add something to achievements, but we'll keep the new system, that's for sure.
So I did a response video to this concept about removing flags from achievements, or like why did they do it? Long and the short of it is, there are some players that play the fuck out of the game. They really do. And they could get 6 to even 10 achievements a day, playing 6 to 10 games. So if you do the math off that, 6 achievements, 10 achievements, that's 60 to 100 flags every single day. It doesn't have to be that you farm every flag, but it could be that you could routinely get Confederates and Krakens and a variety of different things, fire damage. So if you're getting all these flags, that's cool. Well, they remove that, and then suddenly you're down 60 to 100 flags a day, which is potentially like 3,000 flags a month. That's a fuck of a lot of flags. But what they did is they replaced it with a mission that appears for everybody once a week. A weekly mission gives you something like 6 to 8 flag containers or something, assuming you play the game. And those 6 to 8 flag containers are more widely redeemed by the general player base. So in Wargaming's mind, all they did is they moved the distribution system from one way to another way because internal statistics show that they're giving out roughly the same amount of flags. So if they, some power player that's kicking out, 3,000 flags per day might not realize that across 300,000 to 400,000 active players, getting 8 flag containers that kick out, I don't know, 80 to 100 flags, say, that starts being like 4 million flags rewarded per week, 3 to 4 million flags rewarded per week. So yeah, they're seeing a reduction, but the general player base is seeing more. So again, in Wargaming's vision, they're being just as generous as they were before. They're just doing it more broadly across the population. But if they are considering some kind of mechanic, like maybe it would be cool if you got an achievement token, every time you get an achievement and you can redeem 150 achievement tokens for a thing or something. Fuck, I don't know. Or if instead of giving you 10 flags, they give you 1. Which I realize is a hell of a lot less than you used to get, but something. Because evidently the something that you got in addition to looking badass from getting an achievement is required in the minds of some players, and maybe that's something that they'll do. So...
Yeah, Papa Dragon right now asking why not both systems for flag earnings, and you have to remember that we have to kind of keep our economy in balance, and if we give out too many of the flags, it kind of hurts us in other ways, right? Please remember that we are a free-to-play game, and that you know, like the fact that our economy is kind of balanced in around itself is something that we have to maintain.
Not that
So-
it's not that even the flags is any kind of really like revenue driver for us, but another problem is that if we overflow the flags to the game, the problem is that if everybody equips them, it will mean that there is like new baseline for balancing ships for us. Basically, we need to keep it balanced so that people actually put these flags on, not on default on every ship on every occasion. There still has to be some kind of speciality about them. So in this particular case, it's not even about economy. It's just about probably gameplay and overall game experience. Because if they're everywhere and on by default, then we can just buff all the ships to these characteristics, and that's it. There is not much variety in combat flags right now. If we compare ship per ship. So I think that's mostly about.
Yeah, something he just said is like, if you get it to a point where you expect people to use flags every fucking game, every single game, why have flags in the first place? They don't do anything. You could just remove them, change all the ship values, and then it's easier to balance because you don't have the uncertainty of, is a player flagging up or is a player not flagging up? Because the plus 5% speed might be impactful. I think that's probably the strongest flag that exists, is a plus 5% speed, because that actually changes, you know, movement interactions. But a little additional fire chance, a little additional AA, a little additional cooldown, shit like that, what the fuck ever. I mean, if you have the flag, if you don't have the flag, the game is still completely and totally playable. Whereas the movement speed, you know, that could be the difference between a DD that can outrun its enemy versus a DD that's going to be outrun and maybe chased down and killed or something. So that part is important. Yeah, detonation flag, sure. But I mean, realistically, the only time you should ever be using a detonation flag is when it's really fucking important that you don't die. And using them in randoms because you're just like, well, I don't want to die at randoms. Yeah, sure, but it's not mission critical. It's not like the world does not end if you lose a random game. If maybe you're trying to go for a leaderboard spot or you're trying to do something that's really important for you, but the world does not end if you lose a random game. Whereas clan battles, certainly that's going to be a different concept. Healing flag is kind of important, but there are games where you don't get to use all your heals. There are games where you die early. You don't actually get the additional healing or much additional healing. So, okay, congratulations. You used 2 heals, you got an additional 1.5 or 2.5 to 4,000 health, but you still died anyway, so fuck. I mean, they could remove, in my mind, they could remove the speed flag and the heal flag because I think those give pressure. That it's like, well, I'd like to use these, but at the same time, another reason to have flags in the game is it is a small credit drain. So if you've got to a point where you already have all the ships, you don't have any use for money, you don't need to save money, it gives you something that you can kind of buff up the characteristics of your ship in a almost not meaningful way, but kind of meaningful way at a credit drain. So instead of just gaining credits ad infinitum, you're at least kind of like steady stating. But there are people that, you know, they will never play a game unless they're completely and totally flagged up, which means they're going to throw credits at the problem. I personally cannot imagine there is a human being that cares about flags so fucking much that they're going to throw cash at the game to get more credits to buy flags so that they can play a random battle. But I'm sure there are people that do it, but I imagine they're extremely, extremely rare. So in terms of like cash grabby bullshit, it's just, you don't have to use flags all the fucking time. It's okay. But see, it's really easy to say, you'd be surprised, but like think of it in terms of a statistic. Statistically, 400,000 active users, how many people do you actually expect are going to drop $100,000, like $100 to get 200 million credits so that they can fund their flag addiction for a month or two? How many? Realistically, 1,000? Like, what percentage of the player base is that actually? Is that 1% of the player base? Is it 0.5% of the player base? Because, like, it sure as shit isn't 20%. It sure as shit isn't half the player base. It's got to be extremely small number. So it's like, for somebody to actually do that, unless it happened that it was like 10% of the people, 40,000 out of 400,000 people just had to have a fucking flag. I mean, you got to be reasonable about this. The flags are there to kind of accent, hey, this is really important to me. I want to kind of get a little extra shit going for this game, so you flag up. Cool. But it's supposed to be a difference where you flagged up, you equipped the cool camo this time, and you really want this game to stand out and be good. As opposed to like, the flags don't give you plus 10% fire chance. They don't give you plus 50% fire chance. They don't give you guaranteed fires. They don't give you an instantaneous warning so that you can juke one group of shells every game. Like, it's a small buff. Well, whatever. It's just a change from the old way of things. People are likely to protest, but yes, it makes no impact long term. I mean, it's a different way. It's a different way of managing a resource, absolutely. But you have to remember that you may have played the game for 5-something years and you're used to it being this way, but there's some dude that just started out, and it's going to help him out because it's available to a broader section of the player base, and that's a good thing. Sucks to be the person that got nerfed. Always sucks to get nerfed. But that doesn't mean that it isn't healthier for the game or the player base on whole, i.e. rocket changes. But anyway, we're going to continue.
About it.
Okay. I will just quickly answer a question from Saski here because it's easy. In the article, you said that you plan to release the drop rates of items but didn't promise it. Can you confirm that these drops rate will be released for PC? In the article, we actually say that our hard commitment is that it will happen over the course of the next year. So we indeed do promise it.
So you reformed?
And just for context, regarding specifically, like if you go interested in Missouri random bundles, even though there is no information published, random bundles, they have limited amount of them, and you can easily see calculate drop rates by yourself because there is limited amount of pools, and they all have equal chance. And with each pool, basically the chances dynamically and logically change, and it's already an open information. So you can basically understand it yourself very easily if you just look at the armory and see the numbers there.
Yeah, there are people that distrust that random bundles are not weighted, that it's not like you're 5 times as likely to roll one of these bundles as opposed to rolling the bundle you want or something. Sub has said this, Evan has said this. I mean, people in a position to know, yes, obviously they could lie to you, but you have to assume that people are operating on good faith, because otherwise there's no reason to talk to somebody because you just assume everything they say is a lie and worthless. Well, then why the fuck are you talking with them? So he's stated, Evan has stated, both of which have stated there's no weighted odds. It's just a straight pull. If when the Missouri event came out, it's 1 out of 41. So there's 2.4% chance that, or 2.4% of the populace got Missouri as the first pull. So if you wanted Missouri for 1,500 dubs, hey, there it is. Sweet. And then obviously every time you pull a random bundle, there's however many are remaining. 1 out of 40 chance, 1 out of 39 chance, 1 out of 38. That's not the case for loot boxes. Loot boxes are different. But the random bundles, at least, like I personally think random bundles are the evolution of loot boxes, because they remove, quote unquote, the gambling aspect that a loot box gives you. They remove the uncertainty. You always know what you're buying when you buy it. Put a different way, it's like you see the result on a slot machine before you put in the quarter. You just don't know what the next result is going to be. And if that result happens to be a jackpot, well, then why the fuck wouldn't you put in a quarter? Because obvious, but that's just the way that it works. And part of it could be that it's designed to get around loot box law, because it does still have a random aspect of what's the next pull, what's the next pull, what's the next pull. That part you don't know. That you can't control. But it does give you a lot of information, and one, it tells you how many chances, how many possible wrong pulls there are. And two, it gives you a hard limit on how many wrong pulls there can be. For instance, when going over the statement earlier today, there was a ship, the Agon Court, like a tier 5 secondary spec battleship thing. that was released in loot crates. So I don't know what the percentage was, 1%, 5%, whatever the fuck it is. You could have a 95% loot crate and you could buy 100 loot boxes, then never get it. You could do that. I mean, you could play Dungeons and Dragons and roll the dice 100 times and get a 1 every single time. It's possible. It's not likely, but it's possible. So in those situations, if you can't guarantee an outcome, well, that fucking blows. But in a random bundle, you can guarantee. It might be more money than you want to pay, but you can guarantee it. But at least as part of the statement that they put out, they said, if there's going to be something which is gameplay critical, i.e. a ship, because ships can be important for metas and moving forward, that would be gated by a loot box or a random bundle, then they have committed that they will provide a direct interaction, direct purchase option. So you do not have to go through the random bullshit option to get to the thing if you choose not to. That might be time gated, or it might be other, it might be activity or in-game event gated. So it may be gated, but at least it will exist, which I thought was a cool part of the statement. Okay. Yeah, so anyway, we're going to continue.
Yeah. A question here from Dracomania. He's asking, what is the future of submarines in the game? Can we expect any changes to them before they are fully released?
I think yes, because we're not done with testing yet. There's testing still to be done in ranked, to be continued in ranked. And we will have more tests. So submarines moved to the main game, to main client, as you obviously know. It was very important for us to integrate them into the main game so we can continue with testing and involving more players to get more data, more impressions, and stuff like this. So we'll keep doing it. I don't know what scope of changes will be and what the next iteration will be. Maybe it will be some tuning and balance changes. Maybe we'll have to change some mechanics. I don't know that yet. But we will take more time to test them and try them before we tick our box and say, okay, let's do it. I think that when we started to test submarines, we specifically talked with players about the fact that we don't want it to be like CV rework, which we admitted was rushed, and a lot of things in CV rework, and especially a lot of things which we did after CV rework, they should have been done before CV rework. And the process should have been more gradual. With submarines, we've taken it much slower, much more careful approach. We did a lot of incremental changes. We actually changed several mechanics from the scratch, rebuilt them. I think those players who've been following submarines, they know that, they've seen it. And we will be careful until the end because we want to improve ourselves and want to introduce this class better than we introduced the previous one. So watch the updates, watch the news, and please play them, play against them, and tell us what you think. We'll try to make them better before release, of course.
Yeah, they've been extremely reserved with subs, doing all kinds of internal tests, public test server, sub mode, which was or sub battle, which was briefly on live server before it went back into internal test after internal test after internal test. There is a comment from chat. I don't mind subs in ranked, but co-op changed a lot because of them. Yeah, they could address this. I mean, what's the big issue with subs is that they stay submerged for a long period of time. Well, if it's a co-op environment, they could just change the parameters of the ship, that if it's mounted by an AI, the AI burns its dive juice at 2 to 4 times the speed, or it starts with half as much or something. Like, they could alter the parameters so that the AI basically throws away its dive juice early so that it just, submerges or surfaces faster. So there's more interaction there. But you would still have to have some under the water interaction because people, thematically, they're playing the game, they're versing the enemy, etc. But rather than having them take 15 minutes to surface, they might come up in 5 to 8. I mean, that's something that they could fuck with, but that's literally part of the reason why you put it on live server, is to see those interactions and come up with those changes and then implement those changes. That's just not something that you experience until you actually experience it. and then you figure out what to do. They reduce the amount of damage available to farm. Yeah, but the amount of damage never mattered in terms of the game. That's the thing. Farming damage looks cool on a YouTube replay. Farming damage looks cool on a PR website, but it doesn't matter. There's nothing intrinsically amazing about doing 150k damage versus 200k damage. Somebody was asking about base XP. You know, what if you include subs into random battles or something, and then there's less damage, so everybody's going to make less money? No. You make money based on the percentage of the enemy that you hurt. So if you take half of a destroyer, half the health of a destroyer, which is what, 10,000 damage, or you take half the health of a healing battleship, which might be 60 to 70,000 damage, you get the same rewards. But 80,000 damage is 8 times as much as 10. Yeah, but it's how much of a player interaction to another player are you having? In that case, subs don't change anything, but they definitely make for a lower number. And the PR site is not something that's specifically endorsed by World of Warships. The PR formula relies heavily around damage, so one would hope that if subs get added to the game, that the PR site would maybe do a soft reboot or a soft reset or something that keeps the numbers a little more relevant. Because if we go from tons and tons of fucking battleships to a lot of subs and much less damage, well, then anybody who's trying to play for PR or leaderboard bullshit would have a very hard time doing it. Sometimes naval battles want damage, sure, but the enemy team has to go through the exact same issues that you do. So if the enemy team needs damage as well, they're going into the same environment where they might see a bunch of subs and have less damage to farm. So it's equal on both fronts because both sides have the same conditions. Yeah, so you finding the 90 knot torps to be such BS, subs doing 30 plus knots on the surface alone. This is all based in realism. This is an arcade game. There is historical precedent to a lot of the stuff they do, and they recognize how important that is to people, but ultimately, they're going to balance the game however the fuck they're going to balance the game. And it just is what it is, you know? That's just the realism, the realistic sense of it. They make a game for people to play, to interact with other players, and to do the thing. And having the faster torps made for more reliable damage, but you also have to understand that they could nerf that because they're still in a testing phase. Personally, I played a lot of subs. I don't find the faster torps to be OP. I find the faster torps to be usable. There was no point where I felt like I was just dominating matches in a sub, and I've seen other players which are regarded as some of the best players in the world in subs, and they don't just run around and kill everybody either. So, I mean, there's positives and negatives to it, but ultimately, torpedoes are never as guaranteed as gunfire, because you can shoot somebody and hit them. People learn how to do that extremely reliably. Torpedoes need more interaction and setup to result in damage, so giving them some kind of benefits to allow them to get the damage in the first place is not unheard of. I'm going to continue with the Q&A.
Okay, thank you. Let's go back to one of the original questions, because obviously the competitive community hears new map and they're like, "Ooh, can I play on it?" So can you tell us what tier ranges the new maps are going to be intended for?
Okay, so this is like very preliminary, but most likely the first.
We have always looked.
The silliest part about this is the fact that it's a commercial, but if I upload this to YouTube, the fact that you get to hear probably copyrighted music and shit, it'll copyright claim. Now, granted, I don't have a monetized YouTube because I don't have enough subscribers to do that anyway, but it's still annoying that like you'll get copyright struck because there's a little glimmer of a piece of music that's off an advertisement I didn't give a fuck about. But I mean, fine. You agree, but if they were slower, they'd not engage the battle quick enough to matter. So yeah, tough balance. It is. It is an issue. Ultimately, like, if they made everything real world, you also have to understand that the way that this game goes, if you were sailing along at 30 knots in order to go 30 kilometers, you need what, an hour? 30 nautical miles? Or instead, you travel that distance in a third the time because there's a time compression ratio. There's a compression ratio in the game of basically 3-to-1, I think. So if something's moving at 30 knots, it's actually moving at 90 knots. If something's moving at 90, it's actually moving at 270. So the planes that are going 200 knots are actually going 600 knots in terms of the time compressed universe. So it's like, you're not going to have a 2-hour random battle. You're going to have a 30-minute one, and people need to be able to move the fuck around and do things. So it's just, it is what it is. Technically, in a 3-to-1 compressed universe, what, 800 meters per second shells are going 2,400? Like, I mean, realism is important. They do a lot of stuff to model the concept, but at the end of the day, it's an arcade game. If WoW's was a sim, it'd be a bore. I think there's another game like War Thunder that they're much more simulation accurate. I don't know how well that turns out in terms of gameplay or enjoyment, but there are people that love War Thunder. So, okay.
Which will contain some special new mechanics not previously seen in our game. It will be for higher tiers, most likely. The second map, we don't know that yet. We'll see. Also, on the topic of maps, I don't think we included it in the statement, but interesting thing is that we are not fully, we didn't fully choose the setting for these maps. Well, I mean, one of them most likely will have to be in winter, but there are some nuances there. And second one is not decided yet. So stay tuned, because at some point we will actually involve you guys, and maybe you'll help us to choose the most interesting setting for it. So watch the dev blog and maybe Portal, we'll see.
I talked a bit there in the commercial interrupted. So long story short, they're going to be one map definitely next year, potentially 2 maps. If it's 2 maps, they said something about trying to like put out polls or farm out suggestions to the community as to what kind of setting they want to see. And then also there's the first map is going to have a new mechanic in it, but they haven't described what the mechanic is. I guess somebody says here it's iceberg, so maybe that's why it would be winter setting. I don't know. Jacuzzi mode is back. Jacuzzi mode, what? Ahskance, you have a twin out there and he is streaming Bison is his name. He's a twin? Oh, well. I don't think Bison looks like me. Sorry.
Yes. Clyde the Monkey, I see your comment, and my OCD also ticks off, but this is not the right time. So unrelated thing.
This is the OCD,
so
the
let's
name
go
is off.
to one more question. This is from Point, who is on the team BanCV. We're going to play in the show much later. And he's asking if you can shed some light on our internal QA department. He says, from an outside perspective, it seems as if testing is conducted by the devs themselves and then handed over to volunteers from the ST and CST programs in a rather loosely organized fashion. Can you talk a little bit about how our internal QA works before kind of volunteers come into play?
Yes, sure. I think on several occasions I already talked about it. So our development team is mostly organized in how we call it strike teams. A strike team is a team of developers of different profession, which is aimed at certain area of the game or a certain goal. So there may be, for example, a strike team of hardcore meta, which is about CVC stuff and surrounding stuff, and maybe ranked battles, right? There may be a new classes meta, a new classes strike team, which deals with submarines and was dealing with hybrids and CVs, and so on and so forth. So in each strike team, there are specialists basically for the whole development cycle. I'm not just counting our team, because our team supplies their work in a separate process. But in terms of features and how features are assembled, each strike team contains specialists, UI specialists, programmers, designers, and some QA guys as well. So our development, for those who are familiar with IT generally, you probably relate to that easily. So each strike team has their own development branches for features. And when they create feature, they test it thoroughly with their own QA specialists. Then these features are integrated, these branches with features. When they're ready, they are integrated into another development branch, which is called main branch. Main branch is something which has separate QA process, additional QA process, and it's being QA'd constantly, including automatic testing. There's a special QA team which works on this branch as well. So this branch, all development branches from different strike teams are being integrated in this main branch, and then when we have the amount of features we need for an update, we cut this branch basically, and then it goes to all the stages we described. After QA, after we make sure that the integration is complete and all the features are working together properly, then we give it to super test, and then we give it to public test, and then, well, you know the story, rest of the story. So we have basically three, right, QA stages internally. I wouldn't say that they are organized in loose fashion, but we still need external testing. We need external testing for two main reasons in terms of QA quality. First is that our external testers, and that's a good opportunity to thank them for it, they manipulate the game in a very interesting way. They create many scenarios which we not always able to create with our staff. So when you have a couple of hundred people, like specifically aimed at breaking your game, testing it, you will have some new bugs on super test. They will find some new stuff, and also, which is very important, especially for performance testing, our super testers have very different range of PCs in terms of configurations, because it's not console game. We have like thousands of possible combinations, and super tests and public tests as well helps us to identify the issues with some specific configurations. Of course, we have a lot of configurations in our in-house testing as well, but we cannot match this amount with the amount our testers have. So yeah, I think I answered it.
Yeah. You should post. Post a picture on social media of the the relic testing room where we have all the different rigs that people play on from the last like 20 years that we try and run World of Warships on. It's quite interesting. It's a good, cool collection of strange